describe yourself as a writer by trade, warrior by necessity. Could you tell us more about that?
My job has always been as a writer from the time I was 8 years old and very nosy. And there are two kinds of columnists who write to make you feel good, and they tell great stories, and they also sometimes write columns that don't have much meaning at all, except just for fun. And we used to in the newsroom call those navel lamp columns that could be done really quickly. Then there are those columns that are meant to spur change, to make people think, to decry foolishness, like our American education system not really educating our kids. Those are the types of things that I would do that I felt were necessary, were crusading columns. And I did more of those than anything else. So thus, warrior by necessity.
That They Lived, African Americans Who Changed the World, tells stories from the childhood years of African American heroes such as Bessie Coleman, Muhammad Ali, Thurgood Marshall, and Rosa Parks. How did you write this project? How did this come about? And how did your collaboration with Cristi Smith-Jones begin?
In February of 2017, for Black History Month, every single day there was a beautiful photograph of an iconic Black woman, except it was a little girl embodying that Black woman. And I thought, oh my God, this is one of the best things I've ever seen. And every day I looked at it, but again, I was on deadline, so I didn't do anything except enjoy it. Well, the burden came out and I was, sort of freer than I had been in a year. And in February of 2018, the pictures appeared again. Some of them different, lots of different women, but this little girl named Lola, her mom posted one every single day of February. And I said, I have to talk to this woman. I have to find out the story behind this. So I went on Facebook and I found her and I called her. So I told her, well, pictures are worth 1,000 words. I've got 1,000 words for each of these pictures. And I would love, love, love to collaborate on a project where I can tell their stories. And she said, oh, absolutely not. And I said, what? And she said, oh, I could never do that. Oh my God, that's just not something, I mean, that's too big. That's not something I could do. So I got on a plane and flew to Seattle, got in a car and drove to Kent outside of Seattle and took her family to lunch and convinced her to do the book.
So you've written about the childhood years of these 21 great African Americans. What can you tell us about your own childhood? When did you first realize that you were a writer or could be a writer?
Well, as I mentioned before, when I was 8 years old, I knew that's what I would do. But what I had to do was figure out how to actually get paid so I could eat, because I was a child who loved to eat, who understood the economy, who knew that you had to find a job of some sort. And I just wasn't sure what job there was to try. I don't have a book. And, if I don't have a book, does that mean I don't get paid and we don't get to eat? But later, as I started to write more and to excel in high school, my high school English teacher, and I grew up in Tarboro, North Carolina, little town in eastern North Carolina, 10,000 people there when I grew up, 10,000 people there now, not the same 10,000, but we're consistent. And we had one high school, and my high school English teacher convinced the principal to let her teach a journalism class. We got these great books that said News Writing 101. And I immediately said, that's how I can make a living as a writer. And from that point, when I was 16 years old, I was a journalist.
Would you like to read something from That They Lived for our listeners?
I would love to. This is Duke Ellington, and this is my grandson as Duke Ellington. This, again, is one of my favorites. Edward Kennedy Duke Ellington would grow up to be one of the most celebrated musicians and composers in history. He is considered one of the founding fathers of American jazz. But when Edward was 15 years old, he was serving sodas at the counter at the Poodle Dog Cafe and writing his first composition called Soda Fountain Rag, and he did it before learning to read or write music. Imagine that. One of the greatest composers of all time, one of the greatest band leaders of all time, one of the founding fathers of American jazz, started behind a soda fountain as a soda jerk, writing music without knowing how to read or write music.
In 2020, you published The Burden, African Americans and the Enduring Impact of Slavery. This powerful collection of essays is a plea to America to understand what life post-slavery remains like for many African Americans. So how did this amazing project come about?
Well, my first call was to my friend Leonard Pitts, a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist for the Miami Herald, who works outside Washington. And I said, I'm doing this book and I need you to write an essay for it. He was finishing his novel. He said, I will stop what I'm doing and contribute something. My next call was to Nicole Hannah-Jones, and I said, I'm doing this book on this subject, and I'd like you to write the foreword. And she was finishing her own book, which she still hasn't finished, because then she pivoted to the 1619 Project later. But before all of that, she wrote some of the most powerful words that have been written about this subject. And I knew that there were going to be amazing things coming after it. So I just...